welcome everyone to the 10x Go to Market podcast. I am pumped to have Bill here today, both because he's an incredible revenue leader, awesome person, and one of my favorite Pocus customers. So, very excited to have Bill. And for those of you who haven't joined this live podcast before, this is your chance to learn really tangible, actionable insights from incredible revenue leaders like Bill. So, I have some questions that I'm excited to ask him, but if you have any questions, feel free as always to throw them in the chat. And if you want to put in the chat who you are, what company you're coming from, great. We will follow along there as well. But maybe before we dive in, Bill is a revenue leader with over 20 years of experience transforming and accelerating revenue growth. And right now he's Chief Revenue Officer at Mural, which I know a lot of people here have probably used Mural and loved it previously at a small company we all know called Salesforce. He was at Slack before the Salesforce acquisition, and lots of topics we're going to talk about today in terms of transforming organizations, building high performance teams, and even dive a bit into how Mural uses Pocus. So, Bill, maybe I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week. So, as Alexa mentioned, Bill Dwoinen, Chief Revenue Officer at Mural. I've almost lost track of the experience I have, so thank you for the reminder. And based in the suburbs of Chicago. For anyone local, I'm no longer allowed to say that I'm in Chicago because there's this like big line of like you're not allowed to claim it. And lately, on top of really enjoying my time at Mural as CRO, I'm a proud father of an 18-week-old boy or 16-week-old boy. I lose track, and so that's been a ton of fun. So yeah, a bit about me, and just really looking forward to the call, the podcast today.
I love it. I love it. Maybe let's start before Mural days. Tell us a little bit about the Slack Salesforce days recently after the acquisition.
Oh my gosh, it's been a journey. I know you and I were talking about. I was one of those people that never in a million years thought I'd be in sales. Like you always had this like perception that it was, I had to go sell cars or go sell insurance to be in sales. And so it's so funny to think about that 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago to now. And so, when I joined Slack, it was really exciting. I had a great run in the human capital space. I loved working at LinkedIn. Culturally, it just was such a euphoric place that I think taught me how to be. You can be this like strong leader that is all focused on execution while being thoughtful and a human. Like early on in my sales career, I didn't think you'd be able to be both because Career Builder was more kind of that Wall Street telecom, selling copiers type culture. So then when I went to Slack, it was really about getting into the software space. It's such a legendary PLG company. And so a few months into my tenure there, it's like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and we see this like breaking news story that there was a rumor that Salesforce was going to acquire Slack. And the first thing we all said was like, no way, because Stuart Butterfield was always very vocal about two things. Number one, we don't need sales teams because the product can sell itself. And then number two, like not wanting to be acquired. And so it happened. It was announced on December 1st, 2020. And it was a great experience. I would say, one of the coolest experiences of my career to date. I say to date because I think there's a lot of great things ahead of me. And just being able to bring together the two cultures of Slack and Salesforce. And Salesforce has always been a culture I admired that is just built on strong execution. I always say I got my PhD in sales being a part of Salesforce and that culture. But it also, I mean, people, you hear the stories, right? The headline of the acquisition and all these great stories and Dreamforce, but it took a few years to figure out. And so when I left Salesforce in this past year in February of 2025, the work that was done in the few years that it was, together, the kind of better together story, there was so much to be proud of, but it was not clean and easy as it looks, but it was such a great experience to be a part of um, a top two or three largest software acquisitions ever. Now we might see that change with the valuations of companies today, but a great experience and just so fortunate to get to work for companies. If I date myself a bit, back to the job board era, when job postings were like super cool. And so being able to do that for 12 or 13 years then work at a company that's so admired like LinkedIn that really plays a role in shaping people's careers and lives, and then getting to work at places like Slack and Mural where people will like are like, "I will quit my job if we you take this away from me." And so it's been a really cool journey, but being a part of that acquisition and that whole experience was a lot of work. It came with a lot of challenges, but such a cool thing to experience, and it definitely set me up for success in the role that I'm in today.
That's amazing. And something you talked about before was early in Slack days, sellers weren't a thing. We don't need salespeople, which is something we can all talk about. I think that myth has been busted, but there was that era in PLG that the product can sell itself forever. And then you get to a point where, sure, the product can get you far and it's a great pipeline source, but then you need sellers to actually take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so, fast forwarding a bit, so you had this awesome experience, LinkedIn, Slack, Salesforce, pretty big companies, actually very big companies. And then you went your lateral to being a CRO of a smaller but very high growth company. So tell us a little about that. What surprised you? What did you wish you knew before? What didn't surprise you? Just tell me about that transition.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and yeah, the no salespeople thing is funny, and I always think it's in I'm a bit biased. A lot of my career has been in the strat enterprise space, and I do think that you'll always need like a more a personal touch with that level of customer. I think if you were to ask me the question, 10 years ago, I may have had a ton of surprises, but it was something I was really ready for. And so where I was in my career is I wanted to go somewhere, and autonomy is the wrong word because in all those places you mentioned, you had a lot of freedom to run your own business and creative ideas, but it's almost like this kind of well-oiled assembly line that you're on because everything is so well defined. And so for me, I was ready for that shift of kind of the LinkedIn, the Salesforce, even Slack was, I think, a few thousand people when I joined and under $1 billion. And so Mural, we're just under 400 people. With a very, we're proud of our ARR. You can't compare that to Salesforce and Slack in those companies. And so I don't want to say there wasn't any surprises. I think the biggest surprise may have been just how much I'm enjoying it. I knew that I would like it. I also think in the beginning, you're thinking about the give and take of like, whether it's the things that you can do to entertain clients or the having a dream force or just things that, Mark Benioff being the best salesperson in the world, having him at your disposal to go meet with clients and like things like that. And so a lot of times in the beginning, it's kind of this like, I understand the things that I'm giving up and gaining, but it's just been so fun because the pace in which we move and remove my like, so, chief revenue officer reports to our CEO, but I even love seeing the impact our frontline leaders can make and just how fast we're moving. And so the impact is not limited to role or scope where I think about where I got to my career. I always think about team segment company, right? Am I making an impact on my team? Am I making an impact on my segment? Am I making an impact on my company? And I do think I'm very proud of the role I played in integrating Slack and Salesforce with being a part of some of those early deals, but I wasn't making an impact on a $36 billion company. Where here at Mural, whether you're an individual contributor, you're in product marketing, you are an SDR, like you are truly shaping the direction that we're going, not only in your day to day work, but in the thought leadership that you have. Today, we had this really cool, we had our first Mural AI talent show where our employees came and presented ideas on how they're using AI in their day to day. And you're like, this is amazing. Like, we can take half these ideas and scale them and just, accelerate the things that we're doing. And so, um, all the things I thought it was going to be that I was ready for, but just the level of enjoyment that I'm having with the things we get to do, and then seeing the impact we can all make. Because I do think everything that we do is we're shaping the future of Mural. And I think in the collaboration space, I've been in this space now for 5 or 6 years, and companies are at this like really, I don't want to say this impasse, but like truly defining who they want to be and who they are going to be as people settle into the way they're going to be working moving forward. Because a lot of that demand came from this hopefully once in a lifetime event where everyone went home, and so everyone had 19 different collaboration tools. There was demand coming from everywhere. But I think this is a very integral point for companies in our space to have a more defined vision, to execute a lot cleaner, and to move fast.
That's awesome. Something I wish I asked you before we got even into your career. Um, Did you know you always wanted to be in sales?
No, absolutely not. It's why I always get asked to come back and talk to students, and, it kinda piggybacked to what I shared earlier. So, I will date myself a bit here, but when I graduated college, there was a stigma. So if you had more than 3 jobs in 10 years, companies wouldn't hire you. And so, um, there was all this pressure to find the job that you thought you'd do for the rest of your life. And so I was a clerk at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. To this day, like, I wake up in the morning and I watch Squawk Box. I'm like a nerd. I love financial news. I love the stock market. I love that whole world. And so that was my first job out of college, and I thought I would do it forever. And when I realized it didn't really align almost ethically and culturally to what I wanted, even at a young age, I was lost. I'm like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I'm going to be unemployed. The things you go through like in that phase. And one day, one of my closest friends called me and said, "Hey, my company's looking for salespeople." And right away, I shut it down, like, 'cause I was like, "No way, salespeople are slimy. I would never want to do that." Like, blah blah blah. Like, I thought that's what you do if you can't get any other job. And he said, "Listen, like, you have a great." I'll never forget this. He said, "You have a great work ethic and a great attitude, and I think you can figure out the rest." And believe it or not, I'm like not a handy person, and so this is why this is funny. But my first sales job was actually selling carpet cleaning supplies and restoration equipment. And the demos I was doing was actually demoing carpet cleaning machines.
No.
And when I realized it was time to move on from that industry is when I did a demo. I closed the deal, but I had like the dirty hose where the clean hose was supposed to be. So I was cleaning the carpet with dirty water. So it's like, okay, I think I get sales, but I don't think this is the industry for me. And so, yeah, it was one of those stories where it was like, never thought I would do it. And now I think two things. The first thing is I couldn't imagine not being in these environments, but now it makes more sense to me, right? I was telling a story the other day about how when I got my first job at Illinois State, I cold called the head of like the dean of students to like ask for a job. Or, I got to play a year of college baseball, and a lot of that, in baseball, if you fail 720 times out of 1,000, you're successful, and sales is the same way. And so looking back, it makes sense. But in the moment, I never ever thought I would do it, nor could I believe I actually survived selling carpet cleaning supplies for as long as I did.
Well, I so many stories there that I love, and I think incredible sellers don't always think they wanna be in sales, but they end up doing a job that is shockingly sales and shockingly exciting for them, so I love asking that question because there's always a good story to great sellers of how they entered this space. Um, let's talk about actually a little bit of Pocus and the partnership with Mural. Why did you, originally choose to buy Pocus?
So the reason why I'm laughing is not because we bought Pocus. It's because when I started at Mural on February 3rd, I believe it was, I was told we were buying Pocus. Not like I was told it was happening, which I think, and let me unpack that for a bit. And so what I've applauded Alexa and her team for is just the way in which they operated within our company. It is like the perfect playbook on how to sell. Like the amount of groundswell and excitement around Pocus is amazing. Every meeting I'm in, it's like, this is what we're doing, or like we're rolling out, kind of activating our outbound motion a bit more with new logos. And the first thing we're doing is like Pocus playbooks. And so to unpack that a bit further with I was told we were doing it, is that there was such tight alignment to the things that we were trying to do, whether it was to break in the new logos, accelerate outbound, surface actionable information. Our CSMs are in focus because it can surface information on, Trojan horses, people that were a champion at company X and now they're at company Y, or Bill changed jobs and he was a, power user at the previous company. And so the sales team had done such an amazing job building up groundswell, but not overhyped, just like truly tied to the things that were important going into a new fiscal. And so there's two things I think to take away from that. Number one is it such a great job of like build the story, build the value, then sell it. Second thing is it's also why selling to sales teams is great. I tell our teams all this all the time. Like selling to sales teams is amazing because usually they have budget, they move pretty quick, and they are the like loudest people in the room when it comes to advocating. And like, my 16-week-old has his Pocus onesie. It's even happening in my house. We have, brand advocates in our household now because the impact it's made on the business. And I know I've said this to you multiple times, but just the effort and energy your team has put in the partnership is also what makes all that happen. So, kind of a more detailed answer, but I did not say I'm not the one that said yes to it. I was just very firmly instructed that I was buying it on my first day.
I appreciate the kind words. That is so, so great to hear, and your team is equally incredible and has been fantastic partners. I'd be curious, one more Pocus question. After you bought Pocus, tell me a little bit how reps use Pocus and the results of Pocus.
Yeah, so to take a step back, so our we have a few different segments of our business. So we have a land team, right, that's responsible for both new logos and that typical PLG motion of, upgrades, consolidations. Hey, I have a small team that I bought on my own. And I want to convert to a bigger plan. And so they are kind of your engine of, if our leader, Chris, who was amazing, if he had like an up to the minute report on pipe gen, he would have it. Like that's how like that business just runs so consistently. And so that business within our land team, it's not just the playbooks, it's the servicing of the right people. It's the surfacing of giving them clues because these folks have, thousands of accounts they can break into, hundreds of accounts they can break into. And so how do you surface actionable data to accelerate conversations? And so, the amount of pipeline that we get from using Pocus is close to 50%. But what's insane to me is our close rates are right around 33%. So 33% of the pipeline we're creating from Pocus is closing, and those close rates are insane. Usually you see, anything within a quarter, you might see we close, 3% of our open pipeline, 7% of our open pipeline, in that sort of business. And so I do think a large part of it is we're getting to the relevant person faster and we're accelerating deals. And we're not even just, it's not even just core mural. It's we're seeing Luma deals pop up, which is our kind of practitioner wing that helps our companies with design thinking and methods and to help them become strong, visual collaborators. And so we are learning so many things about this business that the center of it is Focus helped us find the right person faster. Focus helped us craft a better email based upon the research that we saw. And so it's not just the volume of pipeline, it's the conversion of the pipeline. It's just data we've never seen before at that level, which is why now we're looking at how do we scale this to our strat team? How do we scale this to our emerging teams? How do we accelerate the work that's being done across our different teams? And so, pipeline to me is never about the number. The number has to be there, but the conversion rates are why we are like tripling down on all things Focus.
That is so cool to hear. I love hearing those metrics. It's so fun to your wins are our wins. So very, very fun. And congratulations on those incredible, incredible milestones.
Yeah, and one more thing to share too. I think one of the reasons why we're all excited, and for those on the call or those on the podcast, a land team or a GRB type team is a pretty kind of organic part of an enterprise motion, but it's something fairly new to us here at Mural. And so, what was crazy about being at Slack was maybe 10 or 11 years old, whatever it was, but the selling motion was fairly new because of that a belief of we don't need salespeople. And so that wasn't the case of a belief gap at Mural, but a lot of the demand was coming in through just the evolution of the way people were working. And so we said, hey, let's invest in this land team. And what we're so excited about is that the customers that we're landing through using Focus and those high close rates, those are our future customers over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And so, we are just getting started. And so our executive team is looking at those deals that we're landing as that future person on stage at our company kickoff or that, future logo story that we're talking about. And so there's so much more to be excited beyond just the deal. It's the impact it'll make on our overall business as we bring in new customers to Mural.
Incredible. Thank you, Bill. I love these wins, and I know we just talked a little bit about tools and process and wins there. Let's go from that to team. So let's talk a little bit about how you've built and continue to build really high performing teams. What are some of those kind of core values or habits that you prioritize?
Yeah, it's I love this question and I'm like a leadership nerd. I just love kind of the all the things that go into leadership. And I'll tell a quick story first. So I don't feel like it's right for me to talk about leadership without talking about my dad because my dad coached college baseball for almost 40 years. He would coach in the summers. He volunteered. He was like a maintenance worker. So he wasn't like an MBA student. He wasn't like someone that had all this leadership experience. And, to this day, he hasn't coached in maybe 15 years. Like there's still people that tell stories about the impact he made on their lives, especially in such a young place in their lives, to be, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, trying to make a career out of baseball. Like he just helped people so much. And when I took a look back, when I really started to get into leadership in my career, I thought about what he did. And because he never had like, in baseball, there's like division one, two, three. He never had like, the best players. He had really good players. But what he did is like he created these environments where people felt like they could thrive. And it was centered in just transparency, support, and accountability. Because all people ever wanted, especially to be baseball is a very fragile game. You fail a lot. It's like very emotional. And so what people always wanted and why they thrived is they every day they knew it was expected of them. They always would know where they stood and they felt supported. Because what happens a lot is people know where they stand, but they don't get the support to get better. And so I try to take some of those principles into my leadership career. And so I was going through some of my old, like, every year I talk to my team. One of the things about being at a bigger company is like every year we would just do reorgs and you would have like a different team. And so I was going through some of my old presentations where I would really just center on what my leadership principles and core values are. And it really starts with communication, building a culture where communication is expected. The second part is a culture of trust, because if you have that, communication is clearer. I stole a quote from one of my mentors, Brad Patterson, that I met at Slack and Salesforce, is that good news flies fast and bad news flies faster. And so that's a, culture, built on trust. Third thing is a big one for me. It's collective responsibility. It's we win, we lose, we win, we learn. There's no finger pointing. And so this culture of collective responsibility. Then the last thing is just, the transparency, and they're all centered. And so you kind of start with like, these are the ways that I approach things every day. And for me, it's like in my DNA. It's not necessarily a stretch for me to operate that way, but you create this culture where people feel like they can communicate with you. The trust part isn't just in communication. It's I can go for it, make mistakes. I can anchor big in a deal. I could create some friction in a renewal conversation and feel like you're going to have my back, right? You can, go for it. Friction's not a bad word. And so I try to bring these core values into a team. And now it's how do you kind of bring those core values to your leadership team for them to execute. And if I look back on, my tenure as a leader, as a young leader, I didn't know any of this. I just was kind of operating as trying to be the best salesperson on the team, which is what you're taught a lot as a leader younger in your career. But now when I look at the culture we have across our leadership team, like I'm just, one of the things I shared with our leaders yesterday is I'm just so proud of the way that you all work together, the way you challenge each other, the way you support each other. And we are trying to come in and create this culture at Mural of just collective responsibility and trust of like, take a shot, whether you're a salesperson, you're a marketing person, you're a product person, like go for it, think big, and we're going to have your back and be here for you. You kind of can envision that like a cliche corporate fallback thing, like fall back and we'll, catch you. But that's really what it is. I think you can't lead without those sorts of core values. And it's not, you have to differentiate core values as a leader and a culture you try to create from forcing everyone to be like you. That's not it, right? That's not what you try to do when you kind of communicate out your core values. It's you're more so communicating the type of environment you want to create. And you're also saying what's not okay. Like if we don't have reps that feel like they can share bad news on deals, that's on us. If you don't have a culture where a leader feels they can come to you and say they're struggling with something, or we're going to miss our number this quarter, that's kind of on me as a CRO to fix that. And so for me, that kind of ground floor foundation you lay is so critical. And then when you see people operate in that sort of culture, it's so fun. And obviously, we're very results focused, but it's to me, it's like the leading indicators we're going to get there. And I'm so proud of how our teams are working, and we're just getting started. I'm 6 months into this. Our leadership team is about a year in, and there's more to be had. So yeah, it really is around kind of the communication and the core values around the culture you want to create, and just living them and checking in on them throughout the course of a, year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is.
That's incredible. I really appreciate that was one of the most thoughtful answers I've heard to that question. So I really appreciate that perspective and feel like I can probe you on that for another 30 minutes to understand how you actually do that. But maybe we'll go full extreme and ask a very opposite question to close us off because I know we're almost at time. Do you have any beliefs that run counter to popular narratives that you see on LinkedIn or kind of commonly held wisdom about go to market?
Yeah, so I can probably answer this one for 20 minutes. We had a laugh about this before. I mean, listen, you know, I grew up in sales with a sales bee. It's not a methodology anyone's ever heard of. But what it was centered on was like, know your customer, ask good questions, close next steps, right? Like, I think what I disagree with or what I don't necessarily agree with, I think is two things. Number one is like sales has always been sales, right? It's been know your customer, sell to a problem and not the 12th problem, and kind of these little steps across the way. And so I think people really overcomplicate GTM and just overall sales processes. Then the second thing is it's not easy. And sometimes, and I kind of joke, and it's not, I have so much respect for LinkedIn, the platform, the content. They are so focused on the user experience. But in some ways, it feels like Instagram sometimes when I'm like, wait, everyone's in Italy. What am I doing wrong that I'm like not on vacation? Where you scroll through LinkedIn, you're like, wow, it just feels like everyone's crushing quota and everyone's exiting for $10 billion and everyone had the best month of their life. Like it's hard. Like getting a company, now that I understand what it's like to be more kind of involved in the day to day, like it is hard. And not that it's hard when you're bigger, but like it is hard to lead, it is hard to sell, it is hard to grow, it is hard to do all of it. And if I laugh about the last, like my time at Salesforce and Slack, I had 6 years there. They were you can split it in half and they were opposite spectrums. It was like low of low, high of highs. And that's normal, like you have these ups and downs. And so it's more so of like people, you have to respect the hustle and grind and failure and experimentation that comes with being a part of sales culture. And you don't always hit your quota, but you kind of go through LinkedIn, you're like, yep, everyone's crushing it. Everyone's exiting for billions of dollars. And it's like Instagram. Everyone's in Italy and not working. Like, what am I, what am I doing wrong? But it's no disrespect to the platform of LinkedIn, but it really is. I'm not saying that people should complain about how hard it is, but it doesn't really paint a picture for what companies are going through. And whether you're Salesforce or Slack or Mural or Focus, the evolutions don't happen every 10 years anymore. You have to evolve what you're doing and transform almost every 90 days. I'm not talking big major company transformations. It's more of like things are moving so fast, whether it's buyer personas, how people buy software, the role AI is playing. And so it's just more of like this realistic picture of what really happens versus the perception of what people project.
That was incredible. Thank you, Bill. That's super reflective, super kind of intentional, very interesting. I really appreciate that perspective. And a lot of it comes down to kind of being a good human, being a great leader, and kind of knowing that sales and company building in general, high highs and low lows. And you can't read everything you see online. And from now on, every time I see someone posting about Italy on Instagram, I'm going to think about LinkedIn. And when I see people on LinkedIn posting about hitting quota, I'm going to think about Italy. So I appreciate that comparison. But thank you so much. We're at time. I wish I had more time with you. This was incredible. So thank you, Bill, for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for a great partnership. And I'll see you soon.